Good morning. Hey guys. And we are live. All right. How you guys going? Hope everyone tuning in from America had a good Thanksgiving and all that. How's everyone going? Hey, Yo Minhan, how's it going? Hey Khalil, good to have you here. A regular. I'm just finishing my coffee here. Hey Emilio. Beck, how's it going? Let me just finish a couple things here for the setup and we are ready to go. I don't know if you guys saw my post on social media about today's live stream. Is going to be the last one in my calendar for this year. So yeah, the last one in December. So I'll start back in January. I'm going to take some time off. But I wanted to finish up this guy that we started almost like 3 or 4 streams ago. This Wilbur guy, and I'm gonna go over what I'm planning to do for this stream in just a second. I'm gonna give it a few more minutes, see who else joins us. Hey Otis, Side Effects, how's it going? Hey Javier. Sorry about that. Hey Doggy. By the way, you love your thanks Khalil. Yeah, it's actually something that I wanted to talk to you about. Well, talk to you in terms of sharing with you what I'm going to be doing. So Khalil is referring to a kind of like a HR Geiger's inspired creature that I did. I'll get to that in a second because it's part of a larger or bigger announcement that I have, something super exciting that I have for you guys. But yeah, I'll get to that in a second. The only thing is, while I finish this coffee, I have to put my microphone away. All right, so let me show you in the meantime what are the plans for today and what we're going to be doing with this Wilbur guy. I don't remember. I think one of you guys suggested his name is Wilbur, and I just named it Wilbur, and now that's the name of the file, Wilbur. Let me just bring it up here in Photoshop. So yeah, so this is just a quick paint over I did. Put it here so you guys can see it. Basically, this is what we currently have. There's a couple of differences from the last stream where we left this guy, where we finished with this guy, or where we end up with in the last stream. I just added kind of like the biceps that you can see here. So I extended the arms a little bit and gave this shoulder plate a little bit of a different shape, but that's about it. And then thinking about it, I went ahead and did a paint over. I think I want to keep this type of shape, breaking the silhouette a little bit and make it very asymmetrical, but I don't know, it wasn't working, so I just did a paint over of the type of shoulder plating that I'm planning to do. This is gonna be rather quick, I think. Some bolts, maybe some leather straps with a being held by this metal ring, and a quick fiber mesh for the fur coat or something like that. So that's the idea, just to wrap up this concept. So before, after, once we get to this in ZBrush, but just wanted to do a quick paint over to show you guys what I meant. Khalil, so yeah, let me just show you what Khalil is talking about. One of the latest posts in Instagram. I haven't posted it in ArtStation or anything, because I want to accompany that post with what I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So very quickly, this is the creature that the illustration that I did, kind of like Geiger style. Let me zoom in a bit more. It's called Silly Putty Marionette, or not really. It's called, as I ended up calling it, what was it? Sepultus Salaputium, which means something like the grave of the mannequin, or mannequin's grave. But that's kind of the idea. Now this is going to be part of something that I'm going to release. I'm not allowed to say it yet, but it's something super cool, very different from what I've been doing, and it's gonna be obviously free. A great resource for you guys. So pay attention to, like, keep your eyes peeled, and see what is coming in the next, hopefully this week actually. If it is not tomorrow, by the end of the week I will have something for you guys. So this guy is going to be one of the central pieces of what I'm going to release, but I don't know, I cannot say right now. This is a little bit of a tease, I know, but it's going to be really cool. And this guy is kind of like one of the examples that I use, or the demos basically that I use for what is coming. Right, so let's leave this one there and jump into ZBrush and do a bit of the good stuff, what you guys are here for, right? All right, that's coffee done, ready to go. Okay, by the way, let me know if because I know in the live stream, let me just check that. Right, so I know if I leave the chat on the screen, you guys probably won't really see the thumbnail, and it will be actually annoying. So it's one or the other. You know what, I think I'm gonna turn off the chat so you guys can see the silhouette, because it's quite handy. And yeah, but if you have any questions or anything like that, just put it in the chat. I'll have it on the second screen, and I can have a look at any questions that might pop up. All right, so according to the sketch, right, or the quick paint over here, we have a few things to do in terms of subtools. So I'm going to start with the simple ones, I guess, the straps, and they're going to be pretty simple. I'm going to show you a quick technique to do that, and I'm going to start by selecting the body. I think I'm getting a bit of a cold, which is annoying. All right, so I'm going to select the body, go into solo mode, and this is just a Dynamesh blob, but I'm going to use this as a base to generate that strap. So let's go ahead and turn off symmetry. By the way, this is going to be, the usual way of streaming, my usual way of streaming, because last time we did the C Friends, so the ZBrush Friends, I think it's called, with Anna Carolina and Shane Olsen, which was really fun. But it was about 3 hours of just doodling around, but it wasn't as informative as I usually like to have my my live streams. But it was really cool. So if you're curious about it, it should be already up. Handelmoon, how do you make the armor? I'll get to that. I'm gonna redo it anyway. If you mean the shoulder blade, I'm gonna redo that, so you'll be able to see. If you're talking about the mail chain, like the actual shard made out of little rings, that's all covered in the previous stream about Wilbur. Right, so for this, I think I'm gonna go with there are many ways to do it. I can just mask this out and extrude it and remesh it and that sort of thing, but I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna go and use the topology brush, and I'm gonna just have a quick look and see where do I want to start it. So I think I'm going to start here. Right, so let me just do that again. Right, so these two lines, so these two curves, that's how the topology brush works. You just set a couple of lines, and then you just go through with perpendicular lines and create the polygons. But I'm going to extend this all the way to the back, so just need to get closer here until the cursor changes to this blue color, and that basically allows you to have a continuation of that line. It's not, I mean, the thickness is not necessarily consistent in this case, but that's something that we can tweak later. All right, so that's roughly what I want to do with the first strap. I could potentially just go ahead and do the other one, but I'm going to keep it in separate subtools. So now, in order to create actual geometry, I have to go ahead and do this type of stuff. So like I said, just going across perpendicularly. Doesn't have to be I mean, it doesn't matter what size curve is, so I can just go all the way like that. It's only going to create these polygons where there is the intersection between the two lines that you created as kind of like the main loops, and then you're just creating the intersection or the cuts, the sections of the loop. So this is a pretty simple way to create you know, a clean geometry, very controlled way to create that based on the underlying topology that you have, right? So let's say that I'm happy with this, right? As soon as I click outside anywhere here on the mesh, what I'm gonna get is just a clean topology, like I mentioned. So I'm gonna click here, and now you can see. Let's go ahead and turn on the polyframe. Actually, this is still one subtool, right? So this is basically what this is. If you want to change the thickness of it, so let me undo that. We can change. I think is I usually don't do changes too much in the thickness. So I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think it's either with draw size or with intensity. So let me just change the draw size of the actual brush. Yeah, so it's with the draw size. Some brushes like this, or some brushes in the brush system that work in the same way, that you have to sort of like draw guides or curves and that sort of thing, and then click somewhere else to produce the mesh. Some of them work with intensity, some of them work with the size of the brush, some of them even work with the focal shift to add subdivisions. So that's why. But anyway, that's it. So let's go ahead and split this. So I'm going to click on split on mask points. So I have it right here. And of course we have to, you know, move it around so that it doesn't intersect with these meshes. All right, so I'm gonna do the second one, or the second piece, which is going to be pretty similar. Just as a quick recap, let's do that again. And it's just leave it like that, and then we extrude this with the C modeler. Okay, split on mask. Cool. And here it is. You can barely see it. Hang on, just double check that I actually unmasked it. Cool. Alright, and the other one, following this quick concept or quick paint over, is slightly thinner, and is the one that is sort of holding part of the, or one of the ends of this fur coat. So I'm gonna do a slightly thinner one here, and not all the way. You just wanna, oops. I think somewhere here. All of these can be changed anyway. Just wanna get an indication. All right. So now we have this other strap. Cool. Let's unmask those points. There we go. And I'm gonna switch to the move brush with a larger brush size. Go into solo mode. Sorry, get out of solo mode, and I'm gonna start, you know, giving this shape or adjusting the shapes of this. Before I do that, let me see. Cool. All right. Hey Alex, can you move those lines once it has been drawn out? I think that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully that answers the question. That's what I'm about to do. Hey Apanax, I don't know how to pronounce that. May I know a price for the upcoming course? You're talking about the extra mile, the course that I teach online in the 3dconceptartist.com. That's currently closed, but I will open it soon. So all the information would be there. It just depends, because every time I try to do like different bonuses, so it really depends. And of course, it's just it's an ever-growing course. So I do online classes every week, every now and again, and that all gets added up to the catalog. Is it possible to set a UI configuration from ZBrush 2019 2020 without any issues. Yeah, it should. There shouldn't be any issues. This is literally the one that I was using with 2019. I just rearranged some of the things that I wasn't using and added some of the new ones. That's basically it. Comics Legend, is it possible to move the topology line once it has been drawn, or is it best just to do it afterwards? No, it can be moved. Absolutely. Let me just show you quickly before I move these things away. You mean if you have the line drawn like that, right? You can just, when you hover over the curve, you have the bluish cursor, and that allows you to draw lines. Is that what you mean? Or like actually taking this line and move it like you would with a curve brush? I don't know if that's what you meant. What I mean, if you want to actually move that, it will be easy to just draw it again, and you can just, for example, let me just do a couple. See here, I made a mistake here, or it didn't connect it properly, so it created an extra point, and that is also has to do with the size of the brush. It's better to do it with a smaller size, just so that it's easier to control. But you can very easily go with Alt key and draw a line over holding the Alt key, and that sort of get rid of that line. So you can continue like this. So if for some reason you want to just do a quick drastic change here, I will just clear these ones and then do something like that. Right? So hopefully that answers your question. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on, because there's a fair bit of things to do today. So I'm going to select the first strap, this one, and with the move brush I'm just going to push this out, not all the way. I mean, it's just a concept, not too fussed about this geometry intersecting. What I'll do is hide the shoulder blade, or the shoulder blade, just because that's going to be redone anyway. So this is going to be a pretty thick leather strap. Maybe not as thick as what it is right now, but that's something that we can very easily tweak with the C modeler once we have the, the blocking and the primary shape done. That's pretty good. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the other ones. Again, this is just a single piece that's going to hold the what's the name, the fur coat, and then this last bit here. We could actually merge them all together into one. Into one subtool, so that it's easy to manipulate. Let's just do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and select the first one, go to merge, merge down, okay, merge down, okay. So now they live within the same subtool. So if I want to move this one, but I don't want to affect the other one, it's just easier to use the move topological brush, and that's just gonna help us place these around the ring as well. Alright, so that's looking good. Let's go ahead and go into solid mode, and I'm gonna use the C modeler now. So I'm gonna switch to the C modeler, and I'm gonna tag these faces here. Right, just holding Alt to tag those faces, and let's get out of solid mode now. And I'm gonna press, or I'm gonna make sure that I have hue mesh actually first. I wanna click and hold Shift, and that's just gonna allow me to move these. It's kind of like an inflate basically, but I'm just moving those polygons in their normals, or along the normals. Okay, so that's that done. I'm gonna do the same thing for this, and this is just to change the thickness, because obviously it was very, very thick. Alright, now you can obviously spend more time say with the move brush or the move topological, and refine the distribution of these poly loops. But I think it's working fine for the most part. Let's get out of solo mode and let's do one final tweak of the shapes so that there is no intersection here. Because obviously we changed the thickness, so all right, cool. So that's done there. I think I'm gonna push this down a fair bit more so that we have room to play around with the ring here. Now, for the area where the kind of like the ring wraps around, or the leather strap wraps around the ring, I'm gonna use the C modeler, and I'm gonna show you how I would do it. I mean, again, there's, like anything in ZBrush, there's many ways to do it. I just think this is going to be the fastest and easiest one. But before I do anything, let's go ahead and create the ring so we have a reference of where these things are going to be placed, right? So I'm going to set up the ring first in a separate tool. So I'm going to click on the ring 3D, go into the initialize palette, and I'm going to reduce the amount of polygons. So I'm going to set maybe 8 and 16. That's pretty good. Once we add subdivision or dynamic subdivision, this is going to look pretty smooth anyway. And yeah, let's go ahead and make a polymesh 3D. And let's copy the subtool. And with this, the Gizmo 3D, oops, there we go. I'm just going to place the ring. Right now it's a little bit thick, but all I want to pay attention right now is the placement and the size, really. And then we'll worry about the thickness in just a second, because again, we can do with the C modeler very easily, exactly the same way that we did the straps, or we can use something else like the inflate, for example. So you can go to the, for you guys should be on the deformation palette, yeah, the inflate, this one here. I have it here in my custom UI, so I can just go ahead and deflate it. That's probably the easiest way, right? And yeah, let's go ahead and fine tune the placement. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and do the wrap. So I'm going to select this subtool, go into solo mode, and I'm going to work in solo mode, and then we'll use the move brush to just adjust everything around the ring. And I'm going to use the C modeler, obviously, the C modeler. So for the C modeler, what I'll do, I'm just going to hold the Alt key, and I'm going to tag that face. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe from this angle. Actually, all right, I'm going to do this one with the C modeler, and then I'm going to show you an easiest way to do it, or a fastest way to do it, faster way. So I'm going to hold the Alt key, tag that, make sure I have Q mesh selected, click and drag, and that will extrude this face. So now I can take the mask lasso, hold Control, mask only this, and the mask only the face, and use the Gizmo 3D, center it to the unmasked areas, and then we can just, rotate things around. Alright, so that's cool. Now, like I said, I was going to show you something a little bit easier. Once you mask the face, which is what I just did, and this is something that you can do even before you use the C modeler. You can just start by masking the face, and then holding Control using the gizmo and dragging, that basically is going to extrude the face. So you can hold Control, click and drag, and that's just gonna extrude that face. So let's see if this one works. If not, I'll show you another way to do it. But it's probably cleaner than what I'm doing. So I'm just holding control and dragging to extrude this. All right, so let's see. So I think that looks all right. I like the messiness, like it's not perfectly aligned, but of course we can go ahead and tweak that. So for example, we can go ahead and mask these points just by holding control with the lasso, with the mask lasso, holding control around this. Invert the mask, bringing the gizmo center to the unmasked areas. I can hold Alt and reset the rotation, although it doesn't really matter. I'm going to use the kind of like the global rotation here, and I'm going to rotate that. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Center, rotate, and I'm doing it based on the camera. That's why I'm looking at it at the wrap from this angle, so that I can just use that rotation like that. And like I said, there are many ways to do this that I'm doing right now. You could probably do it a little bit cleaner just with the C modeler, but I think it works, and I'm going to show you another way to do it. All right, so that is kind of like the first one, right? Or the first pass. There's a few. I mean, every time that you use the control click and drag using the Gizmo 3D, it's going to generate these creases, but we'll clean that up in just a second. I want to show you another way to do it. So I'm going to use this strap to show you an alternative method that is probably cleaner, and it's going to give you a nice rounded shape, at least around these you know, the wraps. So let's see what would be the easiest way. I mean, like I said, there's many ways. There's different and easier methods to do this. Just thinking, I'm just going to show you something else that I would do in this case. So I'm going to hold the Alt key with the C modeler, tag this face, and I'm going to click. Remember, I have QMesh selected here as my action, as my polygon action. I want to click and drag, and that's just the normal extrude. But if I hold control, it's basically going to extract that face, right? So I'm just going to use that to set kind of like the separation between the two, and I'm going to hold the Alt key as well just to give it a different polygroup just in case. So basically what I just did there is I hold the Alt key to tag a polygon using the C modeler, hold control, well, click and drag, and then hold control to extract that face, which is the green one in this case. And then I hold, while I was still holding control and extruding that face, I also held Alt key, and that is just to assign a different polygroup or polygon ID just in case, so that make sure that this is very different. So now I can just, again, with the QMesh, click and drag to select the same kind of thickness as this thing, right? So we have those two pieces that we use the C modeler to extract that, and so we have those two parts of the strap, but we now need to connect it. So in order to connect it, I just need to tag these two faces, right? That's the connection, and I'm gonna right click or press the spacebar over that, click delete. So that's my new action. I'm gonna delete the tagged faces. There we go. So now there's no faces here. This is kind of like an empty polygon, and here's the trick. You can hold over an edge, hold the spacebar or right click. In my case, and this is the reason why I have my keyboard here, I don't use it as much, just to sort of like type numbers or save files and put the names, but for this action, because I have the pen, for me it's really hard to just right click and get the, you know, the pop-up in the right place. So I prefer to just use spacebar, right? So I'm gonna hover over the edge, press the spacebar, and there's this option called bridge, right? And bridge has edges or two holes. So in this case, what we have are two holes, right, that we wanna bridge. This is one hole and this is the other one. So let's go ahead and click on this and then the next one, and this is bridging the two holes. I haven't let go of my click, and now I can just go up and down or left and right. So if I go up and down, you'll see I just add polyloops, and if I go left and right, hopefully, there we go, left and right, we get this bulginess or like this arcing feature. So I can go up and down to add polyloops, which is super handy, and left and right to add, you know, more curvature to this. So I think I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it there. And that's just a much easier and cleaner way to generate what I did here more manually, right? So that's one way to do it, and I think that's probably the easiest way. I'm going to repeat what I just did here on this tiny little strap, so that is, you know, a little bit clear. But before I do that, I'm going to insert a couple of lines here, and then use the good old Gizmo 3D just to push this down. Cool. All right, so we have that there. Now, obviously, if we go out of solo mode, these are not necessarily connected yet, and that's what we need later on. When we clean this up with the C modular, we're gonna add some polyloops, like the long polyloops, and then we're gonna arrange that. Let's do a quick save. Let's see if you guys have any questions so far, and we'll try to address them. Just getting an armor upgraded. That's right. Hey Peter, how's it going? Peter 96, what's going on? Alex, cool. All right. So let's go ahead and do this other little strap here. So this is going to be just a recap of what I did here. So I'm going to do it a little bit faster. I'm going to hold the Alt key, tag this polygon, click to extrude. Whoops. Make sure I have QMesh, right? Click to extrude it. Hold Control to extract that while I'm extruding it. Let go. Then I'm going to use QMesh again to give this thickness. It was lagging for a little bit. All right, so I'm going to hold the Alt key, tag those, press the spacebar, delete those faces. Hover over an edge, make sure I have bridge selected, 2 holes, and I'm going to click on the top one and the bottom one. And there we go. All right, so I think this process is not the best for the computer. It was just lagging a little bit. But we'll see. Hey Jose, how's it going? Good to have you here. I'm gonna go ahead and do one more thing. Just insert one polyloop there and hold Control, invert that, center the gizmo, and then push this down. All right. Cool. So I think we are done with those little wraps that I wanted to do. If you want to tweak these, for example, that is, if I want to center it, because this is the one that we did manually a little bit off, I could just go ahead and select my move topological so that I don't affect the bottom part. I just rearrange that, and that's basically what I'm going to use to adjust this around the ring. So I want to actually, I think the ring is fine, the placement is fine. So what we need to do now is assign some or add some polyloops in the middle so that we can bend the wrap around a little bit. But that's, again, very easy to do. With the C modular, we can right click on an edge, have the insert ready, and click and drag. So if you want to, okay, let me just undo that. If you want to center or have a loop that goes exactly in the middle of the polygons that you have here for some reason, in this case I don't care, but if you want to have it right in the middle, because you have selected a single edge loop, is going to be determined by the movement of your mouse. So it's kind of like eyeballing it. If you wanted to have it right in the center, so that letting ZBrush average the distance between the two, let's say the two edges or the two sides where you want to have the polyloop in the middle, you need to select multiple edge loops. And the way that multiple edge loops work is ZBrush is going to have a look at the two edges, or the two edges where you want to add an insertion in the middle, and it's going to average the distance and put one right in the middle. And when you click and drag, it's going to add multiple edge loops in between those two, right? So if you don't if you click and drag, you have multiple loops, but if you click once and let go, this is going to have one. So click once, and that is right in the middle. So if I click and drag, it will add multiple edge loops like that. If I just click once, it will add it right in the middle. So let me just undo all that, because we can actually use this to add a couple, let's say that. And if I want to repeat exactly the same action, in other words, adding the same amount of poly loops as well as the distance in the other straps, I just click once and it will be repeated. Cool. Yeah, so that's it. Let's go ahead, and I'm actually gonna give it a single poly group to all that. I don't mind having multiple poly loops, but one is probably better. And now in terms of cleaning this up, what I'll do, I mean, you can go with a similar, go one by one or by loops and decrease or increase the these edges. So those dotted lines here indicate that those are creasing lines. So if I, for example, go ahead and turn off this, go into dynamic subdivision, you'll see it looks a little bit weird. So there's some edges that are like quite hard, and I don't want that. So what I want to do, so pay attention to those dotted lines. I can go to the geometry palette, and I can go to the creasing tab, and I can crease all or uncrease all. So I'm gonna uncrease all, and now they're kind of like clean, and I can use the dynamic subdivision to see how this looks subdivided. So this is much better. You can add some poly loops around the edges if you want like a sharper edge. We'll do that at the end, but you know, it's always better to manipulate the larger forms with less polygons. So I'm going to go to the, hang on, yeah, with polygroup, there's so many poly terms. So polyframe enable. I'm going to bring in my move topological with a larger brush. I'm just going to go ahead and start pushing these closer together so that it wraps around, or it makes sense, the wrapping around this ring. That's it. That one was pretty simple. Let's do the same thing with this one. You might have to move some of these points a little bit more. Oh, come on, don't crash. Brilliant. All right. Well, it lasted about 40 minutes today before my computer went haywire again. So I'm gonna do a quick save. I'm gonna reset. I'm gonna reset my tablet. Sorry about this, guys. I literally just don't know what is going on, and I cannot find a way to solve this. I have followed many things online, as many as I could find and tested. But yeah, nothing seems to be working. Quick save. I literally have no idea. I think I have exhausted all my possible solutions, and I just simply don't know what else I could be doing. So I'm just gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna close. Let's go ahead and do a quick save. Lulu, yeah, it's always only when I'm doing streaming. Like, it doesn't happen otherwise. So it is a compatibility issue with OBS. I might try a different streaming software, but you know, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So yeah, it only happens with ZBrush. Hopefully I added something. All right. Yeah, so it only happens with ZBrush when I'm using OBS for streaming, which is very strange. Yeah, and I have tested so many different settings that yeah, that's what it is. So in the meantime, you can have a coffee, go for water. I'll be back in 2 seconds. I have a friend that does, that he's into computer tech, and he told me that it might be a BIOS compatibility issue or something, that I need to update my BIOS. But all the drivers are all right. So I don't know what the problem is. So I think I just gave up. I usually don't like to give up so early, but I gave up in terms of trying to figure this out. I'm just gonna hope that someday either an OBS update or some NVIDIA driver or something gets updated and it fixes the problem. But in the meantime, I just gave up and I'm just resetting stuff every time, which is not ideal, but definitely faster than trying to figure this thing out. All right, new document. All right, so here we are again. Here we go, and I'm gonna select my move topological. So this is where we were before everything went haywire. All right, and it's also, I mean, I don't have that many polygons. It's a total of 5 million. That's nothing for ZBrush. That's really nothing. But it's also most of the time when I start rotating. So if you think about it, it kind of like makes sense. It just puts a, put some stress on the processor, but it shouldn't be an issue, at least with the setup that I have. I have a Threadripper that has 32 threads, like 16 cores, 32 threads. So it is pretty capable of handling most of stuff with no issue. And it just literally just happens when I'm using OBS. So I think I narrowed down to know that it's just with OBS. The thing with ZBrush is when you are looking at it in a, in this view, right? It's fine. When you start rotating, that's when ZBrush sort of like picks up the pixels and recreate them so that you can see from different sizes, the different sides. So that's probably when it's lagging the most. Anyway, I'm gonna go in solo mode here. At least we know that with a quick restart of ZBrush and the Wacom tablet, everything goes back to normal. So if this happens again, you just need to sit tight and wait until I fix the issues. All right, not a problem. Cool. So I have the straps and they're kind of like aligned nicely, and they are all sort of like being held by this ring. Now obviously when the strap sort of wraps around the ring, we need something to hold it together. So I'm gonna use some bolts, and that's again really easy to do. We can bring in what is it? I think IMM. Yeah, let's use this IMM brush, and we can use some of these ones. I don't know which one would be good. Let's use this one, Snap ASCII. So we can do that. Yep, that should be all right. But what I'll do is, right now this is over the surface. I'm just gonna push this down. Yep. All right. So let's do it again. Click and drag. Actually, I want to have a consistent size across the different straps. So what I'm going to do is set the size based on the brush size. So now whatever I insert is going to be the size of my brush size, maybe smaller than that, a bit more. Okay, and when I click and drag, I can hold Control, and ZBrush is going to snap the size to my brush size. So I can do the same thing here, hold Control, and it's going to be consistent. And for this one, I just need one. All right, let's clear that out. Go into polyframe, and I'm gonna go back to my move topological, hold Control and Shift to access the selection tools. select my polygroup of the straps, and I'm gonna split hidden. So now I have the bolts of these nuts here in a separate subtool. So we can now go ahead and go into solo mode, and just to refine this, we can click dynamic subdivision, and that's just giving us a nice smooth preview of this. We can actually smooth it a little bit more just by increasing the smooth subdivision preview. And with the C modeler brush, we can go ahead and hover over an edge and make sure that you have insert. And what I'll do is I'm going to add 2 polyloops around the edges so that it sharpens them up, a little bit. But I prefer doing it this way, just adding geometry rather than creasing those edges, because creasing is going to give you a very, very sharp edge, kind of like hard surface, and this is not hard surface. So I can just modulate how hard those edges are going to look. I'm going to click here, push it closer, same here. There we go. I think the small one looks fine. I think I'm gonna leave it like that. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's go ahead and get out of this. So they're pretty cool looking. So yeah, and this is using dynamic subdivision, so it looks pretty smooth, but in reality they're very low poly. So I can go ahead with the move topological brush and just keep refining the shapes a little bit, and those shapes that I'm moving are actually what I'm manipulating are basically the low polygon or the low mesh, right? Although it looks very, very smooth. So this is one of the advantages of using the dynamic subdivision. All right, cool. Let's do a quick save. Let's see if you guys have any questions or suggestions about how to fix my streaming issues. I bet it's possible to try a format after you backing up your stuff. No, I don't think so. I don't. Backing up is way. I mean, restarting and doing a format is way more complicated for me than starting. Just doing this, just because at this point I have too many things going on to stop, as well as too many things installed that I can't be bothered doing it again, and I don't even remember some of the plugins and stuff that I have installed, so it's not an option for me right now. Do you prefer to add polygons around the edges on the strap or crease edges? Okay, so I think I covered that. Depending on what I'm doing, I prefer to use always geometry, unless I have restrictions for the amount of polygon count. I might use the creasing, but other than that, I prefer to use polyloops, just because I have more control over the bevel of the border. Memory leak or something? Yeah, I mean, I'm not very well versed in the technology, computer technology stuff. I just do my thing here. If it works, it works. I'll try to do my best to fix it, but it's been a few weeks since this started happening. It doesn't have to do with the poly count. It does. It just whenever there is a process that it would be hard on the processor, like rotating. That's generally speaking where the processing power spikes, or the memory. That's when it happens. How would you add, say, leather texture to that strap? If you mean the texture in terms of detailing, different ways. You can create your own custom brush and then just add manual details, and you could also do a quick UV for this, which is pretty simple. So you can do a quick UV and apply a texture like using surface noise. So making use of the UVs, you can apply a texture, an alpha, to the whole thing. You can also, once you have the UVs, you can use the new morph UV to manually add those details. So again, different ways to do it. I think I'm gonna move forward. Just going to use dynamic subdivision here for the ring as well. And according to what we have here in Photoshop, let's say, So we have that covered. Whoops. So we've done this. Right, so that's done. Let's go ahead and concentrate now on the shoulder blade, and then we leave this one for, so this 1, 2, 3. Yep. So let's concentrate on the shoulder blade. This is going to be, again, pretty simple. The complexity is given by the duplication of the creation of the pattern. So I think I'm not even gonna use this one that we had originally here. So just gonna start again from scratch really quick, using the body as a starting point, and I'm gonna use the mask lasso. So let's put it here in the front, make sure perspective is off, use the mask lasso, and hang on, let's first see where we can start this. So probably here. Right, so this is gonna be the shoulder blade, but I'm gonna give it a bit of a design, as in shape. So let's go ahead and cut it here, or not there. All right, something like this. I think it makes sense, like functionally it makes sense. Let's see it from the back. We can probably, you know what, let's leave it like that, and then we can tweak it once we create the actual piece. So I'm going to use the extract function. I'm going to thicken this up. Clear this out. All right, so I have a single-sided polygon here that, by the way, I think I did that using my custom. I have a macro here called thick that basically allows me to very quickly from a mask section produce a single-sided polygon like I did here, and then I can just go ahead and do serum measure and extrude it and have more control of it. But yeah, so what that macro is doing, so you know exactly what I did. I went ahead, selected everything with a mask. So I had a mask like this. I went in the sharpen mask, so ZBrush masking. I went ahead and did this, so I sharpen it to the point that is very, very sharp, right? And then I went to, that's all the macro is doing behind the scenes. Go to extract, set it to 0, automatically click extract, and then click accept. So I end up with a piece that is based on that sharpen mask that is kind of like a Dynamesh single-sided polygon, right? But then I can go ahead and do a quick serum measure of this. So ZBrush is going to, it's going to be easier for ZBrush, I guess, in this case to retopologize this single-sided polygon, and it's also going to be very easy for me to manipulate a single-sided polygon and then use the C modular to extrude and add thickness to it. Are you working on a high poly subtool? Try duplicating model, decimated, duplicate model type. Thanks, Alex. I don't think that's the problem. Nothing to do with like the poly count. I've tried that as well. So subdiv, then alpha brush or noise. Yeah, you can approach that. Again, the many different ways depending on the project that you're working on might be easier or not. So I'm gonna keep just while I try to answer those questions. I'm gonna keep pressing zero measure to reduce the amount of polygons I have here. The pie menu is cool, thank you. Yeah, so that's that circle menu from Wacom. Yep. So no, I think I haven't answered it today, but yeah, this circle, this pie menu that I use, it's one of the Wacom. It's called, what is it? Yeah, it's pie menu. I don't remember the name. It's part of the Wacom driver, Wacom settings, so you can set up the way that you want it to. So I have this in Photoshop and in different software. I have my own custom pie menu, and I have one for ZBrush just because, I could have a different custom menu, but I think it's just I have things there that are like how can I put it? This is just to give you an idea of how I decided to put things on my UI and what to put in that pie menu. before I do that, let me just enable AccuCurve. I'm gonna push these corners a little bit so that this one is going to be rounded. So just these two corners, so that the ZBrush knows that I want to keep these corners a little bit more pointy. And let's click ZBrush. So yeah, so what I'm saying is that the way that I decided what to put in the UI and what to put in the pie menu, the pie menu is more like organizational stuff. So I have things to do with masking. So if I click here, I have blur, grow, create alpha, sharpen, everything that has to do with a mask. I have well, solo, which I also have here, but sometimes it's just easier to, you know, click here and go into solo, right? I have, again, things to organize, subtools or grouping. So I have all my group stuff here, and I also have things to deal with the subtools. So reorder, append, merge visible, you know, all low, all high. So all of those things I consider to be kind of like organizing my scene, and that's how I remember when I need to go to somewhere that when I need to click on a shortcut or a button that is related to that, organizing my scene, I go to the pie menu. If it is something to do with actual sculpting and modeling and tweaking the actual shapes, that is in my UI. That's the only reason. Right, so I'm gonna do one more ZBrush, and you saw, because I made these pointy lines here with the move brush and the AccuCurve, I sort of kept them like that, so that's quite cool. I'm gonna do one more, try to keep it very low. Cool, very nice. So this is very, very cool. All right, so now that I have this, I can go with, before actually going into the scene modeler, get out of solo mode, and I'm gonna use the inflate just to push this out a tiny bit. And I'm using the inflate, although this is just a single-sided polygon, just because the inflate will push all the polygons along the normal, so it's just giving it a bit of a space between the shoulder and this. And I can actually go ahead, let's do a little bit more than that. Oops, not polish, inflate. There we go. And I'm going to use the move brush to just, you know, try to avoid any collision here. So that it actually sits on top of the strap and the mail chain and all that. Cool, so I think this is working nicely. I might even, with the Gizmo 3D, scale a tiny bit and put it up. Right? Just because, I don't know, this is kind of like a design thing for me. Having things that are like kind of like in the middle of the I don't know how to explain this. It has to do with the tangents, right? And having a line. Let's see if I can. I'm just gonna bring this in. Oops, what did I put? I pressed something that shouldn't have. Let me tell you why I did that. Just because, I don't know, it might help you as well. So it's just more of a design decision there. So because I have these lines, like these visual lines, like this, right? If I align this edge right in the middle, it's boring. In this case, for me, I think it's boring, especially because we're trying to do things asymmetrically. So just by pushing it like this, it just changes a bit of the distance between, like the visual distance between this line and what it could be a continuation of this visual line here and this one here. So it just changes the size, and then just creating this proportion, right? That's also have to do kind of like with the golden ratio, keeping, you know, the 1.68 whatever it is, a little bit like that. So I always think in those terms, and that helps me with the composition. I know some people might say that it's rubbish. This doesn't do anything, but I think it's just a very easy, you know, very easy way to maintain visual interest and make sure that this type of lines are not boring and so on. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. That's why I moved this a little bit away, and let's go ahead and continue. I'm gonna smooth this out a little bit. pushing this like so. All right, cool. So this is going well. Let's go ahead and do, maybe I want to cover more of this shoulder here. Otherwise there's no protection, right? Let's do the other panels, or the paneling effect, which is, you know, these bits here. And that again is going to be pretty similar, but I'm going to keep it in a separate subtool so that I can create one, duplicate it, and then we have that pattern done. Pattern done. All right, so going to solo mode using the mask lasso. Just gonna try to find the right shape. I think this one should be fine. All right. Now I'm gonna use the same technique I used before. Like I explained, I have it right in my macro. So I just generated this piece, and let's go ahead and do a quick ZRemesher. Oops, forgot to enable half. So it's just gonna remesh it, but keep it very consistent. Let's see. Is that circle? Yep. Actually looking to customizing the menu. Legend has it that expands all the menus to the right ribbon, so you can wrap their list around the length of the world. That's exactly right. That's what the legend says. So it's not, especially now that you can do this with the visible count of tools, which I like to, you know, this is one of the little things that ZBrush adds, and then you think, oh, this is cool, and then you realize that, you know, it's one of the most useful things added, and it becomes, you know, becomes your thing. Just gonna do a quick tweak of the shape before I run another remesher. I think the computer tried to calculate the pixel changes and vectors while still trying to handle connection, packets and stuff. Told you record video, that's a lot of calculations. I know, that's exactly what I think is happening, but you know, again, I have a pretty decent setup. I have like 32 gigs of RAM, or I think more, I don't remember. Like I said, I'm not, you know, I'm not big with the computer stuff. So I have a pretty decent setup. So I don't think it will struggle too much with those calculations, although I know they're quite a bit. I'm gonna do one more and see what happens if it gives me a better. No, let's keep it there, keep it simple. So let's get out of solo mode, do the same thing I did with the previous one. I'm gonna go to inflate, so I have that second piece in there, and I'm not gonna duplicate it just now, because actually before I do anything, bring in the gizmo, rotate it like so, and push it down a bit. Now before I do anything with this and duplicate it, I'm gonna make sure that I finish this piece, because, you know, giving it all the details and all that, and then duplicate it to go to the next one. And we have about an hour, so yeah, we have plenty of time to finish this up and add the fiber mesh thingy. Today has been productive, although we had that hiccup there. All right, let me just quickly go through this. Alex, try another stream software. The program should be optimized to handle all the metrics. Thanks, Alex. I might try the stream OBS Streamlabs, I think it is, and that's you know, I've heard it's pretty similar, but it's actually just an OBS with a different skin or something. So I don't know if that's gonna make any difference, but I will try that as well. So Lulu, I've actually thought about it. Well, I didn't think about it, because again, like I said, I'm not super well versed in that world. But someone suggested that to me. I have a spare computer that is actually my previous computer, and it's not too bad, so I could do that. I just don't know how to do it, and I really, yeah, I struggle with that. As soon as I started testing all those things, just I can't be bothered really. But I'll try that. Right. Yeah, that's something definitely that I would try. I have the computer. I don't know what the splitter is. I'm assuming it's just a little thing to connect with between the two computers. So that's something that I would definitely try if it's possible. Let me see if I miss anything. Should I really look into customizing menu? Yeah. How smart I have to be to understand the program and set up my own hotkeys and macros. You don't have to be like, you can be just like me. Just try things, wait until it crashes or just does something that it shouldn't be doing, and then just figure out what is not doing the way that you want to. Setting up hotkeys and macros is actually really simple. Very quickly, to set up a macro, to set up a hotkey, you can hold Control and key, the Control key and the Alt key together at the same time, and click anywhere in the menu. And as soon as you do that, Siri is gonna give you, for example, frame is F. If I delete this, let me just delete that. So now frame shouldn't have one. Delete. Oh, it cannot be deleted. Let me do it with solo. Right. So now solo, before I assign solo to the S keyboard, or the key in my keyboard. So when I press solo, it just goes to solo, right? When I press S, it goes to solo, sorry. So in order to create your own custom hotkeys, you hold Control Alt, right? I'm pressing the 2 in my keyboard. Click on solo, and immediately after you have that. Well, I have to pay attention to what's happening here at the top. Control Alt click. It is asking you to either press Escape to cancel, delete to remove whatever you have there, or press any other hotkey or combination to set up the key. So I'm just gonna press S, and it's asking me, this is assigned to another interface, yes, whatever, click OK. So now I press S and I have a hotkey. That's as simple as that, right? I'm gonna grab something to drink, just water. I'll be back, guys, in 2 seconds. All right, here we are, back. Yeah, thanks guys for all the suggestions. Definitely, I would like to try some of those. If someone has a link to, something, to a tutorial, something that actually shows how to set up the, the 2 computers, one for streaming and one for working with the splitter, whatever that is, that'll be awesome if you guys can share it with me. I'll definitely try it. All right, so we have these 2 planes or single-sided polygons at the moment. I'm going to start with the big piece here. Go into solo mode, and I can just do a quick smoothing of these shapes. But basically, all I want to do is give this thickness. I could even give it a bit of a kind of like a border, but yeah, I don't think it's necessary. Or if anything, we can just use. Actually, I'm going to show you a different technique, or an extra technique that you can use. So I'm going to click on the C modeler. This is a macro, by the way, that selects the C modeler and makes my brush size very small so that I can handle things with a simulator a bit easier. I want to make sure I have polygroup all with the Q mesh, and this is going to be just an easy way to give this thickness. So now I have thickness. Maybe that's too much. All right. So now I have thickness. Yeah, and I think that's about it. All I want to do with this one, of course, it's going to be detailing and everything else, but for the most part, I think this is it. If you want to add more details, so you're going to have kind of like a border that goes around, we can use something like the tubes, curved tubes, right? And we can go ahead, get a bit closer here, go to, actually, this is another thing, because when I changed my UI to ZBrush 2020, I removed some of the things that I don't use as often, but I had it here in my palette. So basically, under the stroke palette, you have a curve functions, and under the curve functions, you have the frame mesh. So by default, all of these three switches are enabled. It doesn't really matter in this case because, you know, I don't have any crease edges, and borders doesn't really matter at this point either because they're not open. But I have polygroups. So if I click frame mesh, ZBrush is going to frame the difference between the polygroups. So I have 3 polygroups, and in between those polygroups, it created this line. And because I have the curved tube selected, I'm gonna increase the size of my brush, and the size of my brush is going to determine the thickness of that tube. So I'm gonna click on 1, maybe here at the top, and now I have, you know, this border sort of like covering the entire set of polygons. So that's one way to do it. I think that looks all right. Let's click outside. You can also, if you wanted to, you can separate this into a different subtool. I think it's fine to keep it within one. Clear the mask. I'm gonna turn on dynamic just to see how this looks a little bit more polished. And of course, this is just like a tube, but we can go ahead later on with sculpting brushes, like for example the trim dynamic, and you know, flatten this a little bit, give this more of a, you know, flat shape. So I'm doing this with dynamic as well, so that's why it looks a little bit smooth. Not ideal, so I'm gonna undo that, and I'll do it after once I add the subdivision levels. But yeah, that's about it, right? You can also do it a little bit more sharper here, but that will be all part of the next step, just detailing. Now, once you create this, you can still go ahead and tweak this. Did you experience the lagging issue in 2019? Yeah. I don't think it has to do with ZBrush. I mean, obviously it has to do with ZBrush because of the, you know, it's putting, I'm using ZBrush, so it's the processing power being used, but it's not the application. It's just it has to do with the combination of the two. It has to do with OBS. I'm 100% sure now of that. What I was saying is that even once you finish with this border, if you think maybe it's a little bit too thick, because we have polygroups, we can hold Control and Shift to access the selection tools. Select that, mask it by holding Control, click outside of the canvas, invert that selection, or bring back the selection, invert the masking, and then we can use the inflate brush or the inflate process here in the deformation palette to just reduce the size a tiny bit. Right, so that's one way to do it. But I kind of like this, and again, I'm gonna make it more like flatter once I move on. Cool. I'm gonna do the same thing here for the bottom bit. So C modeler, extrude to generate some thickness. That's good. Frame, stroke, frame. Use the tubes. Make sure I have my brush size. Click on that one. It's just gonna be slightly thinner than the main one, which is fine. Cool. and I might have to just change the thickness of it. So I'm gonna clear the mask and use the C modeler again. Click on this poly loop and holding shift, I can just move this in because it's just a single poly loop, poly group. Cool. So now that I have that ready, kind of, what I can do is actually, let's go back to this one. Let's go ahead and finish this app just to show you the process, and I'll do it a little bit faster on the big one. And then once we have this ready, I can go ahead and duplicate it and, you know, place it in different areas. So I'm gonna go ahead and divide this. So geometry divide, and have it here for you guys. It's on the geometry palette. So divide this a couple of times, maybe subdivision 4, because all I'm doing is just using the trim dynamic now, or I'm gonna be using the trim dynamic. So this is just a sculpting in a way. So yeah, I'm gonna start using the trim dynamic. I can actually enable the the back face masking, which for thin areas is pretty useful, so that I don't affect the back side of these polygons. And I'm using the trim dynamic because I want something that is very organic. I don't want to have an edge that is like perfect. If I want a perfect edge, I could just use the C modeler to delete some poly loops or some loops and extrude certain areas, or I could even do it from the actual panel. But because I want this sort of like chipped metal, or you know, with certain indentations, I'm just gonna use this trim dynamic, which gives me a pretty cool effect. I might want this to be a bit, you know, bit sharper here, so I can use trim dynamic here again. Oops. Go, and here at the top. So you see, I just changed that sort of like tube into being more like a cube border. Yeah, just with a sharper edge, but all with the trim dynamic. All right. You could also, you know, use a bit of the trim dynamic here on the panel itself. So kind of like polishing it so that it's not super. Oops, let me undo that. No, it's super flat. I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, mask this, invert that mask, so that I can work a little bit more freely, adding this indentation on this area. Just so that it's not like super flat. Perfect. So I think I'm happy with this. You know, pretty simple. We can go ahead as well and do some damages to this, and for that we can use the damp standard brush, and we probably need more subdivision, so let's just add another one, maybe even more. So we'll have, well, I'm not sure if I want to have 4 millions in this. Let me just undo that. I think I'm just going to give it a tiny bit of, you know, damages around the edges, and anything that is part of this kind of like centerpiece, that's just going to be some chipped, some very simple indentations. You'll see what I mean in a second. It's not very clear what I'm trying to do, but just want to add some scratches, some remnants of, I don't know, maybe this guy obviously has been in battle before, and this is the armor that is used. I know I'm placing them a little bit over the place, but alright, something like that maybe. Also, we can use this standard brush, holding Alt, and just push things in a little bit, and that's just kind of like giving it not as sharp as a scratch, but definitely an indentation, and that's something else that we can use at this point in this area, kind of like giving this, you know, like if you received, like, I don't know, a BB gun impact or something like that. So Let's use the damn standard brush as well. Just adding some details very quickly. I mean, I always say this, that adding details is so easy in ZBrush, and now with this extractor brushes is even easier than ever. So it's just a matter of having your main shapes ready, or like you're happy with the primary and secondary shapes, and then just adding details. It becomes patience, because it's really simple. All right, so I think I'm happy with this. Pretty simple, nothing too crazy. And what I'll do is I'm gonna go all low just in case, and I'm gonna duplicate that little piece, and I'm gonna use the Gizmo 3D to move it. Actually, no, let's do it like that. Scale it down a tiny bit, rotate it. We might have to push this corner up, but you know. Okay, that's probably good. Let's duplicate it one more time, and it's gonna be a smaller one. In there. Just need to adjust the shapes here a little bit. I think 3 is a good number. Alright, and because all of them are really the same, we can go ahead and change some of the details, obviously, so that it doesn't look as repetitive. But before I do that, I'm gonna go one by one with the move brush, yeah, and I'm gonna just adjust the shapes a little bit. I think the first one is fine. It's the second one that needs to be pushed up. And the third one. So I'm just going between the 3 and adjusting the how they fit together. Cool. All right. So if I take these ones, if I go all high, actually I only have these ones. You'll see the patterns are very repetitive. So I'm gonna go into solo mode, and to remove these or change them, I'm just gonna go to the clay brush, which is going to fill in those gaps really nicely, like so. So just a quick way to do it. Right, and then go with the trim dynamic, and that's gonna create enough variation so that it doesn't look like it's exactly the same piece. Don't know what happened here. All right. Maybe this part is quite evident, so I'm gonna go with the clay buildup. It's faster. Actually, before I do that, make sure I have the back face enabled. Otherwise, I'll start pulling areas that I don't want. Trim dynamic. You know, if I wasn't doing this in a live stream, I probably would have spent more time in this area, to be honest. But I think it works. I'll check the chat in just a second. Let me just fix these ones as well. So I'm just again trying to change the pattern that I created with the details. so that is less evident that is the same piece. Standard, and then trim dynamic. Again, this is super rough, but I think for the type on the stylization and the type of piece that I'm working on, this process works. All right, cool. So I think that works. We just need to do this one now. So let's go level 5 of subdivision. That should be fine. Let's go into solo mode. This one I'll do it a little bit more thoroughly than the other one. And instead of, I'm gonna try edge polish instead of trim dynamic, and that's just gonna give me a more consistent flattening of this shape. Whereas with the trim dynamic, it's just gonna dynamically change the planes that ZBrush is using to, well, or trying to generate. This one is gonna give me a more consistent effect. Alright, the harder that I press is the thinner that I will make it, of course, and the more polished that this will look. Again, this is something that you could do straight away from the simple geometry that we had using the C modeler, but doing it by hand, it kind of like ensures a little bit more of organic feeling to it. So I prefer it that way. Now for this other border, instead of using the edge polish, I'll use the trim dynamic. So I mix a little bit of both, and that should really help to sell the effect. So the one sort of like pointing outwards is more well defined with the edge polish, but then the trim dynamic brings back the organic nature of this. This border here that I don't quite like. I have a feeling that this is part of the, nope. Hang on. It's fine. I thought it was just a bit of the planes from the geometry below, but it's fine. All right. So let me just continue with this trim dynamic a bit more here. And there we go. All right, we can also go ahead and do some damages a bit more obvious in this big plate. These ones are going to be more kind of like featured damages in a way, since this is a bigger piece and it's going to, you know, draw the attention of the viewer a little bit more than the other pieces. So we can definitely spend a bit more time in this one than the other ones. Let's use the standard brush as well. And because this again is kind of like the main piece, it probably received more damage than the other pieces. Okay, I'm going to use the trim dynamic in this area again, doing kind of like the same effect that I did for the other pieces, just to variate the surface so it is not perfectly flat. And then, like if I were to take this into Substance Painter, for example, I would continue with the details in there, right? But also adding these little changes in the surface would help with the material and the reflections. So just to vary it a little bit more, so it's not perfectly, it's not super smooth. And I think that really helps to sell the idea of this is kind of like a cheap metal. You know, it's been used quite a bit in battle. Just gonna sharpen this a bit. I think this is working well. I'm gonna go out of solo, do a quick save, and this is what we currently have. Let's see how you guys are doing. If you have any questions, we have about half an hour, plenty of time just to wrap up this concept with some fiber mesh stuff, and yeah, some other details that we can add as well. Let's have a look. Can you please show how to make a hole in a subtool like the one you're on? I don't know which one I was on when that was asked. In the middle though. Hang on. Sculpture. Pixologic, send him a notification, please. About what? Not entirely sure what that means. Oh, okay. So that's about the previous questions. Yeah, I do look at the chat, but I kind of like do more work than looking at the chat. That's why I said if you guys have questions, put in the chat. Every now and again, I come back to the chat and have a look at what you guys have asked. So the armor on the arm. So if to add a hole in there, yeah, there are many ways to do it as well, depending on what exactly you're working on, depending on the project. You have to sort of like weigh which one is the best way to approach it. In this case, because I have, let me just show you. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna clone it. Actually, I'm gonna work in a different tool. Right, so I have this. If I want to, I'm gonna show you two ways, I guess. Yeah, or just the way that I would do it in this case, because I already have this with subdivisions, right? What I can do is maybe duplicate what I have here, select this one, go to the lowest subdivision level, delete higher. So now I only have this low resolution mesh. And then, yeah, depending on what type of hole, I'm not entirely sure what you want to do, but if I want just a hole in here, I'll probably use the C modeler, go to split in one of these points, create that, and then go to the other side. Hopefully it's around here, click. So I now have these two set of polygons, and then right click, Q mesh, click and drag, and that creates that hole. Using the Q mesh, ZBrush is going to merge those two together. And yeah, that's it. And then I can just go ahead, you know, I mean, you can tweak this as much as you want to, but you can go ahead and subdivide this a few times. And because I duplicated this one beforehand, although this one doesn't have a hole, you can just go ahead and project all. So now everything is going to be projected to this one, but because in this area there's nothing to project, it's going to be a hole. You can go ahead and use trim dynamic, you know, to fine-tune this a little bit more. Yeah, and that's your hole in there. If you wanted to do that way, I'm not entirely sure that that's what I would do. And this way it allows you to sort of like keep you know, subdivision levels and that sort of thing, just projecting things. So hopefully that answers the question. Alrighty, so cool. What else I wanted to do? All right, before I move into the fiber mesh, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of details here. So I'm going to show you another cool way to, you know, add details. Well, actually, it's not that cool. It's not that it's not that clever. It's just the fast way. I just want to add some of the bolts And before I do that, I need to create a dummy mesh. So I'm gonna append a cube, whatever that is. It doesn't matter what this is, and I'm gonna turn it into a Q-cube. So now this is sitting somewhere here. Again, it doesn't really matter where this is. Just want to have some dummy geometry so that I can insert meshes, because I want to add the kind of like these bolts around the edge of this plate, but because I have subdivision levels, ZBrush is not going to allow me to insert anything. So by creating a dummy mesh, I can insert them here and then delete the dummy mesh. Let's go ahead and select the IMM IND parts, and let's go ahead and select something that would go with this. Maybe none of these ones would actually work. I just want something simple. Let's see. I mean, I could create my own, but some of these might work. Actually, this one looks pretty good. All right. So let's go a little bit closer here. Again, I'm gonna use my brush size and click and drag, holding Control. That's definitely too big. And also I'm gonna push this down a bit more. There we go. Click and drag, holding Control, and that does it. So I'm just gonna go very quickly all around, creating those details. I'm gonna skip one, and then I'm just gonna add kind of like as if this thing fell. Oops. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I can actually move this a little bit. I think I pushed this one too much. There we go. Yeah, so I wanted to do it like, you know, around this main area. I don't think I'm gonna add the same thing here for the bottom. These ones are not thick enough to warrant this type of bolts. But I do want to have, oops, clear that mask. I'm going to change to damp standard brush, go into this one, solo, and here just want to add kind of like the hole for one of those bolts that is missing. I know, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll have to select this subtool, use the move brush or the move topological brush, and then just move this tiny bit. All right. Cool. Now, because this is a dummy mesh, as you can see here, I'm going to hold Control and Shift to select this, invert selection, and then delete hidden. So now I only have those bolts in there. All right. Now, what else I can do? Maybe let's give this guy some kind of we could do something. Let me see. I'll check my sketch. Right, so we have this done, right? I think I'm gonna skip this part. I'm not sure if I like it. I think I like the fact that this sort of have a triangular shape, and this is breaking the silhouette enough. So I don't want to add this. And let's go ahead and focus on, you know, the fiber mesh. That's gonna be pretty simple anyway, so we can do that. And to do that, we can start with let's see what we can do as a base. Probably let's use the body. Let's use the body. So I'm gonna select the body, click solo, going to mask lasso, and that's just gonna help me generate, you know, a shape like this. Let's see, more like that. All right. So I'm just trying to figure out what's gonna be the base of that that fur coat. I think this is fine. I mean, this doesn't have to be very precise, and it's not going to be very precise. It's just enough. It's just resolution or a mesh really to be able to extract and then use it as a. It's kind of like a sculpt if you're doing you know, hair for a character. That's what I'm trying to do, but just for this character or for the fur coat. All right, so I'm gonna do my macro here. So now I have these, and also let's go ahead and run a quick serum measure. I'm gonna simplify this quite a bit and also give it some thickness as well. In the meantime, let me check the chat. Comics Legend, thanks Comics Legend, thank you so much. Sculptor, by the way, they used to make the chainmail. I use nano mesh for that. That is covered in the previous live stream, so if you wanna have a look at that, the previous live stream dedicated on the focusing on this character, because I did a couple of them in between, like an intro to ZBrush 2020 as well as the C Friends, just having fun doing stuff. What names for your creature one? Yeah, so you're talking about the giveaways. I already posted in the Instagram. I can't remember the Instagram handles, just because, you know, they're always weird. I think Juliano something. I put it in Instagram as well. I just selected those randomly as a kind of like a giveaway. Thank you for all the support on Instagram. But it's in there if you wanna check it out. Do you have a beginner's fiber mesh tutorial? Not necessarily a beginner's one as a tutorial dedicated to beginners, but I have a few of those on the ZBrush Guides website, so you can check that out, see if there is anything in there that might help you. You can filter by beginning or beginners in the tutorials section and see if that, you know, gives you what you're looking for. Also, I have done quite a few of fiber mesh stuff in the live streams as well, so you can look for the one of the creatures that I did, that it has another fur coat, more like a, it looks kind of like what is it, a stop motion puppet in a way. So that one, we did a fair bit of fiber mesh on that one. We did also kind of like a pirate that has beard. No, that one doesn't have fiber mesh. Anyway, if you go to my channel within ZBrushLIVE, there's a few things you'll see in the thumbnail. They have fiber mesh, so you can just use that. All right, I'm gonna select this and use the inflate brush. Cool. All right. Okay, something like that. And this is going to be where the fur coat is going to be. And using the move brush, what I'll do is just very quickly do a quick save. Haven't done one of those. Sorry, not the winners, but the name that came up for the creature. So there's no I haven't chosen the name, but there's some really cool suggestions. I already gave it a name in the ArtStation project. So if you go to ArtStation, that one already has a project. It's called Ariasi, which is kind of like a play on words, not on words, but you know, on letters, if you will. So I did it for, remember that time that there was like some people saying that they were going to raid Area 51. So I did it around that time, and it was kind of like an alien with a spacesuit. So I thought it was funny to just say this alien is kind of like ready to leave because of the raid. So I call it Area SI, which if you write it down is kind of like 51. So altogether it sounds like Ariasi. that's why it was very silly name, and I wanted to name it differently, but I haven't actually chosen one. All right, so I'm just adjusting the shape of this fur coat here, or where I want to grow the fibers. And I think I'm going to push this up as well. All right, cool. I'm happy with this. Let's go ahead and give it a bit of thickness. I'm gonna push actually this down, almost intersecting that neck, because again, I'm gonna give it some thickness using the same technique, C modeler, making sure I have QMesh, polygroup all. All right, so that's gonna be the thickness of this fur coat, or the base of it. So if I go to dynamic, this is how it looks. Pretty simple. It's gonna be mostly covered by the fibers anyway. So just gonna push this. All right, I want a more of a straight line here. Also, just to keep in, let me just also do a quick draw over just to show you what I'm trying to do in terms of like thinking about the design of these, how all these shapes work together. Very quickly, so you'll see, as you know, the primary of main shape of this is kind of like just a triangle, right? But then within this triangular composition, like if you treat the character as a composition, there's also some lines that will help like visually to navigate the composition. So obviously there is quite a bit of detail around this area, and that's just given by the chain. Also there's some details here on the head in certain areas, but then there are some other areas of rest, and that is what I'm trying to do. So this is kind of like a plain surface, as well as this one, and the the exposed arm in here, and some of the nose and the cheekbones, and that sort of, oh, this is not one. So anything that I highlighted with white, they're kind of like plain areas that are a good contrast with these sort of like more detailed areas, or areas of contrast, areas of rest, and areas of details. And then of course, once I generate the fiber mesh, this is going to have a lot of details, so it's going to draw that attention in there. It's going to be pretty noisy in terms of the amount of detail. So because I'm going to go for something kind of like stylized in terms of the fibers, then I'm going to go for tubes that are thick, like so. So that's going to generate some contrast with these smaller details as well. But overall, what I'm trying to do right now is to maintain certain lines of action. So this one is kind of like that. It's sort of like it sort of encompassing the entire composition, right? So you have those circular lines. Maybe just do it like that, right? And then you have other lines sort of like pointing toward the center. So it's kind of like this is mainly one of the feature pieces as well. Yeah, so that's kind of like what I'm trying to do, and all of this is kind of like maintaining the viewer size, or that's what I'm hoping around this area, and then just shooting back to the face of the character, which is the important part really of the character. So that's why I moved this line in here. So now that I have these, let's go ahead and do fiber mesh. I have about 10 minutes. Let's do that really quickly. So because I have polygroups, I'm gonna go ahead and hold Control and Shift to select this, only the polygroup on top. Make sure that double is off, so that the fiber mesh are generated only on one side of the polygons. I'm gonna mask this area, bring back everything else, and I'm gonna go to fiber mesh. So I'm gonna generate the fiber mesh, walk you through that process really quickly, and then I'll have a look at the chat again and see if there's any questions that I can tackle. All right, so I'm gonna click preview. There we go. That's our fiber mesh. I'm gonna make sure the base and the tip are white so that I can see clearly what it's doing. And again, this is going to be pretty stylized. So I'm gonna reduce the maximum fibers, and this is in the thousands. So I have 6,000. And I'm gonna increase the coverage so you see clearly what the fiber mesh, what the fibers are. I'm gonna reduce the twist because this is something that's gonna be damaged anyway once I tweak it a little bit with the move brush or whatever. The gravity, I'm gonna set it to 0 just to fine tune it, and then I can just change that if I want to. I'm gonna change the tip size to 1. Actually, we can go for 0 so that it's kind of like spiky. The root, I'm gonna leave it at 1. And then the most important in this particular case, actually the length as well. All right, something like that. The most important one in this case that I want to go for stylized fibers is, well, two things. I can go for actual geometry, or I can go for like haircuts or something similar. So if I want to go for haircuts, doesn't really matter if this is kind of like a point or not, or actually matters. You can set the tip as 1, and then you have flat fibers, but just gonna go for geometry. I think it works better for this in this case, more stylized creature. And then I'm gonna increase the segments, so that's gonna increase the amount of segments between the root and the tip. And we can go with the width profile and then just change that, you know, change the thickness of that. Okay, so that's basically this width profile is going to change the profile of the fibers. So this shape here is going to make it look like this, right? The segments here means that 8 is going to have 8 segments, so 8 segments like that. And then when I change the profile, is actually going to give some thickness to this fiber. So we are going to end up with, depending on how many points I add, is going to be actual geometry, like thick geometry. So I'm going to give it a 6. Click OK. You'll see now these are kind of like, you know, spikes, which is fine. I think it works. We might have to change the length a little bit and the amount of fibers. Okay, I might change the thickness of it. Maybe it is too much, too thick. All right, and yeah, that's actually less than that. I think that's a good amount. I mean, yeah, I think this is a good amount. Of course, this looks like spikes. They don't necessarily look like fur. So what we can do is just give it a bit some gravity, so that is actually, you know, it feels that is soft and it's actually affected by gravity. Not too much, right? And we can change the variations in directions as well. So that's gonna make it more messy. 0.7 is fine. All right, I think that's looking good. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think it looks good, and then I look at it tomorrow and I think this is rubbish, and then I change it. But for now, I think it's fine. Plus, we're running out of time, so I'm gonna go ahead and click accept. It's asking me if I want a preview mode. I'm gonna say yes, just in case. Actually, let's go ahead and turn that off so that we can actually see the mesh. So in the preview settings, I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to bring in one of my custom brushes here, the flyways, right? And turn this off. And this flyways just allows me to control fibers individually, but I don't know if this is the best approach. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just gonna give it a tiny bit of shape. Not too much, because if I use the brushes, the fiber mesh brushes with this this type of fiber too much, it's actually going to damage the consistency and the volume of those fibers. So it's going to keep it simple. I think that works. And of course, I can go ahead then and use something like the move topological brush. We can go to the brush palette, and this is in case, like, if you want, just let me mention this. So I have these grooming brushes, and this is something, it's like a little pack that you can get from the ZBrush Guides website. It's only like 15 bucks or 10 bucks, I'm not sure, can't remember. You can get this, and it comes with the, all of these brushes, and they're very specific to work with fiber mesh for refinement edits. Some of the essentials that I use, for short, sort of like fur, that is kind of like an animal or creature. So you can use any of these things, but I'm going to show you what you can do if you don't want to get those. I mean, most of the brushes that I have online, they're just to enhance or speed up your workflow, but everything can be done with the essential brushes. So basically, if you have the topological brush, you can go to the brush palette, and there is a dedicated tab or palette for fiber mesh. So all I have to do is click on this preserve length and push it all the way to 100, and that way when I move one of these fibers, is going to be, ZBrush is going to keep the length. It's going to preserve the length, and that's just basically what I want to do here, to either hide some of these so they don't intersect this part, or just push them away. And that's it. That's all I wanted to do. Maybe here, control a bit more of what's happening here around the face. Just be careful not to move if you have, let's say if you're following along and you want to do this, be careful not to move too much. This okay, I think everything crashed a bit. Anyway, I think this is fine. Like I said, I might not leave this one at the end. It looks kind of funny. I might go for haircuts, but that's something that I'll do afterwards. I think that's pretty much it. Let's just do a quick render of this creature, and let me tackle some last questions. So hopefully some of the stuff that I showed you guys today are informative and useful. Let's have a look. You have a beginner's tutorial? No. Cool. Hope I'll read this question. How could feudal, I don't know how to pronounce that, feudal clothes be made like the one in the following link? Let me see. So you're pointing at the golem from Magdalena. I'm not sure how she did it, but the way that I would approach that type of clothing, that padding on the leather, would be, because they're like big thick patterns, I would do it manually. You could approach it by creating an alpha that looks similar, and then just using the surface noise to apply it based on the UVs. I would personally, in this case, when you have like panels that are like that thick, I would do it manually, so I have control over it, and it also feels more natural. Yeah, that's how I would do it, just with the damn standard brush. Can you do hair mesh now on the clothes later, please? What? Sorry, hair mesh now on the clothes. I'm not sure what the question is. Sorry. Maybe it's something to do with the fiber mesh that I did already. Hopefully. Don't be like Robot Brush. Pablo, do you have a Cyber Monday deals on your shop? I did put everything at yeah, I put everything with a Black Friday code. Everything was at 50%. Although, you know, like the things that I have in my shop, they're not any like super expensive. So yeah, I just put it there. But I think it's finished now. Actually, yeah, no, it should be fine. It should be. I put it until Monday my time. So yeah, maybe. I don't know. I always struggle with the time zones. All right. See you later, Alex. All right. So I think I'm just gonna leave it here, guys. Like I said, I'm not 100% happy with the fiber mesh. I just want to show you, you know, a stylization of it and how I would approach it. But for the final one, if I were to continue with this character, I would do something different. Maybe some haircuts as well. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is going to be the last stream of the year for me. I will be back in January. But yeah, if you have any questions or anything about this, you know, feel free to reach out on social media. I probably reply faster there. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna leave it here, guys. Have a good Christmas holiday for those who celebrate that. And yeah, Happy New Year as well. I'll be taking some time off, but yeah, I'll be active in social media wherever I am, just trying to keep up with what's happening. One more thing before I let you guys go, as I mentioned for those who weren't here earlier on today. So I'm gonna share some of the process and some of these creation of this creature, this Geiger inspired creature, later on, at least in ArtStation. And yeah, I just want you guys to be aware, just to keep an eye on ZBrush Central as well as the ZBrush Guides website, as you know, if you follow me on social media, because I'm going to be sharing something super cool that I've been working in a collaboration for the past few months, and I use this as kind of like an example as well, and it's going to be pretty awesome. And I hope, like, I know for sure it's gonna, you know, make some of you guys very excited. And it's going to be a free resource, but you know, it's kind of like my end of the year gift as well. So keep an eye on it. I cannot say too much right now, but it's gonna be ready this week. If it is not tomorrow, by the end of the week for sure. So yeah, keep an eye on that. Whenever you see this creature, try to follow the links along, and then you'll get to it. That's as much as I can say right now. So yeah, Merry Christmas for those who celebrate it. If not, happy holidays. Spend it with the family. And Happy New Year as well. I'll see you guys